had monkeypox.
All right, going live. Let me record this.
Have you had monkeypox yet?
How do
I got mine. I got mine already.
You got yours?
Yeah.
Nice.
I got it early, and so
Record. There we go. I think we're live. Yes. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Awakening Consciousness with Asher and Jesse. Glad to be back. Hopefully we'll do these more often. We're joking about the latest health scare, but I think, and we'll talk about it in this episode. I think the next phase of the, whatever you want to call it, the plan, the what do we call it? The plan, the takedown, the manipulated world events. I think the next phase is economic, and for the longest time they've, at least the truth community has been screaming about an inflation narrative, and we're seeing that play out. We're certainly seeing higher prices. We've seen an increase in the money supply, which has led to higher prices. But I think that the majority of the high prices are not due to the money creation, but rather due to the sort of breakdown of the global supply chains and the just the breakdown in the production of the world. And that's happened in a lot of different ways. So we have due to the previous health scare, we had a manufactured shutdown of the economy. We had people staying home from work. We had ports closing and shipping lanes closing. And now we're sort of seeing those effects. One of the things that many episodes in many episodes in the past, I talked about like these small cuts, that I was seeing in various parts of the economy. I get to talk to a lot of people in a lot of different areas, a lot of different parts of the world, in different parts of the economy, whether it's health or food or shipping or farming. And I just noticed, they would say these, a couple things that's impacting their business. And I would call it like a small cut. Maybe it's a 1%, 2% reduction in efficiency, or in the speed, or in an increase in the cost. And I said that they would start to add up to eventually become a big deal. And I think it's now a big deal. So we're seeing higher prices, higher fuel prices. Higher fuel prices leads to higher prices for everything, because everything needs to be transported. And it's just becoming more and more difficult for people. And so we have the economics, and in the backdrop, we have monkeypox, which I don't think is going to catch on. I think they're
no pun intended.
Right. Yeah. And again, we're living in a world of narrative. So it's like, it's not whether or not a invisible, non-existent virus catches on. It's whether the narrative catches on and people are sufficiently scared enough to actually, do something about it. I think the US has bought, vials of injections and all that stuff. I don't know. I'm sure there's probably people who are lined up to take it, but I don't think it's a majority of them. I think, but I could be wrong. Maybe it does catch on. And so anyways, we'll start there. What are your thoughts?
I mean, this is a serious matter, man. I don't know why you're joking about this. People's lives are on the line here.
Right. Or at least their skin.
I mean, what happened to all the variants? That's what I want to know.
Well, I think it went to economics. I think they stopped being able to trick people with the corona, and now it's on to economics. People are feeling the pinch, and therefore less worried about the other virus that doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah. I mean, gosh, when I step back here, big picture, right? We're just, I mean, we're in it. We're really, really in it now. And by the in it, everything, right? The timeline has accelerated. The shift has accelerated. The energies are more powerful than ever. The economic collapse, the divergence of narratives, the divergence of sort of timeline split, all of it, the split, right? We're really, really, really in it. If you pay any attention to the Schumann resonance, it's doing all kinds of fascinating things. So, it's an amazing time. If we're talking economics and narratives and storylines and all that, yeah, I mean, the system, again, to recap for those, right? The system has to collapse down to zero. So that's not right. So it's funny, I don't know how many people are still thinking like in terms of going back to normal, or or sort of like, if we can just get through this type of thing, right? I don't know where people are at in that thinking, obviously, but the system has to go down to zero, and this is a good thing. This is the collapse of a bazillion year old death cult, like literally, right? This is the freeing of humanity from lots of darkness. And so, the matrix system, the beast system, the cabal system has to go to zero, which means all of the systems that everybody relies on, especially in very developed, advanced, complicated economies like the US and other Western countries, yeah, life gets very difficult through that, to the degree that you're relying on this collapsing system. So this is where we're at. We were talking before the show, about inflation versus deflation, and I think you'll probably want to hit on that here at some point. And at the end of the day, I have no idea how all of that looks. I have my thoughts about it. That's all they are. But I do know that bigger picture, that is going to be uncomfortable for people, right? Living in these places that are going to be affected by lack of supply of all kinds of things, whether that plays out in incredibly high prices or it plays out in other ways, that's going to be uncomfortable. So that's where we're at. That's the time we're in. For me, again, it's the most exciting time I've ever been alive. I've never enjoyed being alive so much as right now. I was joking with you before the show, like, yeah, this whole thing is going to crash and burn, and I'm kind of going to enjoy it, right? Like I'm going to enjoy that, because not because I enjoy watching people suffer at all. That's painful, obviously, but because it's needed to come. It has to happen. It's preordained, and it's part of the freeing of humanity. It's part of all of our sort of shadow side coming up for review, being reviewed and released. And the next phases after that are a lot of fun. It already is a lot of fun, as those of us creating in the sort of creation mode are creating the new earth literally right now. So maybe I sound like an egomaniac, that's fine. But this is like where we're at here. And it's really enjoyable. I'm watching kind of, again, that split where people have sort of incorporated these new energies into their life and are thriving, or they're choosing fear and not thriving. And just to sort of touch on that piece for a second, the fear is not only the people who are caught up in the narrative, because there's another fear-based narrative, which is they're coming to get us, right? And that's as powerful a fear-based narrative as the one where I got to get my 47th booster because, I'm afraid of what CNN's telling me. That's just another fear-based narrative. They're both fear-based narratives that have the same end result, which is living in the vibration of fear and experiencing the results of that vibration manifest in your life. So the split is, that include like the people in that side of that split are not that different, in my opinion, as far as their experience. And there's no judgment here whatsoever. I'm debating now whether I go back and visit the States, in August, and visit all the people I love who are all on that side of the split, so to speak. And I'll have a good time with them. And I really, I'd miss them. I'd love to see them. There's no judgment here at all. It's just my observations on what's taking place.
Are you able to get back in the US?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. So yeah, and I think what it'll come down to, you talked about the collapsing of the beast system. It's like, okay, so what are we gonna build after that? Or, maybe not after. I mean, we should be, and we are actively building right now, but that's the key. It's like, if we can build something better to take its place, then life is great. If we can't, then life's going to be a challenge. And so, from the beginning of the show, that's the message that we put out there, is to basically understand what's going on and then take active measures to do something about it. And that's to, build your life outside of the system, localize your supply chains, form a community. That's all the stuff that we've said from the very beginning. And lo and behold, it couldn't be more applicable right now. So I want to sort of see if I can do a very, very high level summary of what I think is going on like the macro of the most macro of the macro. And I think it's in terms of economics, and I think it's, we live in these sort of centrally planned economies. The world economies are centrally planned. The economy of the world is centrally planned, and there's a group of people at the top that are looking to control as much as they can. And what happens is they own the supply of money, and they let us use it. So it's a product that we use. It's their product, but we use it, and they charge us interest for using that product. And what's happening is there's not enough stuff to satisfy our appetites for consumption. And so people go into debt. The debt is essentially borrowing prosperity from the future to live a better now. And when you do that too much, you end up, your payments on that debt end up going higher and higher and higher, to the point where you can't afford it. At that time, they make it so that the interest on the debt is more and more expensive, and it crashes the value, it brings down the price of the assets. And so the controllers at the top buy up all the assets cheaply and further consolidating their control. I think that's, that cycle has happened over and over again, going back in history. And I think it's happening right now. I think people are over levered. They have too much debt. Governments are over levered. They have way too much debt. And the system, or the controllers, are raising interest rates to the point where it's unaffordable, and the lifestyles that people are used to living are no longer tenable. When that happens, people have to cut back on what they're doing. They're not ready for that. Their debt payments are more than what they can afford. Government's debt payments are more than what they can afford. And that's when the chaos happens, and the prices of the assets crash, and the central planners come in, buy up all the assets, and further consolidate their wealth. I think tell me if I'm wrong, that's like the furthest out we can zoom Yeah, furthest we can zoom out on the macroeconomic picture.
Yeah, well, I would just add to that briefly, and I think you probably have a following point, so I'll try to make this very brief. But so if what we call money, right, currency, if that's a proxy for control of assets, that whole system is a proxy for control of human souls.
Mhm.
So it's like the money supply, the sort of commodity that is lent out to us for use, which then is manipulated in order to cause us all kinds of stress and this and that in our lives, including the great manipulation and the value, the quote unquote value of things. And so these cycles happen where it's let out and pulled in, and the assets are loaned out, and then they're brought back in house essentially to their owners, to that they're registered to the government, and so on and so forth. Well, then the next level of that is all of that whole system is a control mechanism for the human soul, which is ultimately what it's all about.
Yeah, and they essentially siphon off a portion of our wealth with every transaction, with everything that we do. And like you said, that system is coming to an end, because I don't think that they can. It's like things are going to happen, things are going to crash to the point where life has to change. It's just going to change for in a lot of different ways. And the people who are ready to sort of live a new life that's more natural and more doing things for yourself outside of the system, those are the people that are going to thrive in the new environment. There's going to be tons of opportunity, because there's going to be a lot of people who there's going to be a lot of cheap assets. There's going to be a lot of people who need help. And when there's a lot of cheap assets and a lot of people need help, there's going to be ways to help them. And so that presents a ton of opportunity. So if you're seeing this and have positioned yourself well, then you can, you're in a position to take advantage of these opportunities. And so, that's not what we've talked about in the show much, but we have talked about, becoming more self-reliant and independent from the system, so that if you're able, that's just the first step. Once you're self-reliant and independent of the system, then you can afford to take advantage of those opportunities if you are seeing them and if you have the means. And so, that sounds like where you're at in your life.
I mean, it's so what I think, what I would describe as what you're describing, right, is the power vacuum that's happening. So we have one power structure collapsing, which creates a power vacuum. So then what fills that? And what I see filling that is new earth energy, right? Good people who understand things, who are high level, who come from high places, who then step in to then create the local systems, the energetic systems, the networks, the communities that actually serve people. And then that power shifts. So it's like, it's not like, where's my, Section 8 check or my WIC check or, whatever, like, right. It's not the government, it's not that's not where that power is coming from. It's more like, hey, John down the road is an awesome guy, and I like how I feel when I talk to him. So I'm going to talk to him more, and he's got some cool ideas, and he's doing this and that. And it's like we start building that thing, that other power structure that way. Going back to something that you said earlier, it's you were talking about localizing your supply chain. And so right, so it's about getting very local, very communal, and producing food, right? That's like, if I had to distill it into one sentence, or this would be a good slogan for a company or something, right? But get very local, get very communal, and grow food, and you'll be fine, quite literally, right? I mean that's food, whatever happens here, food is going to be at a premium. We should probably touch on that, right? There's a the food, the supply chain is having all kinds of issues, but the largest thing is the attack on the food supply, the global food supply. So we've talked about that before with fertilizer, and we don't need to touch on that again, and wheat as well. But we're now seeing, and we've been seeing for some time now, lots and lots of random events that will cut off various aspects of the food supply in various ways. So we're seeing.
That's my garden right there.
Yeah. There you go. No, and you sent me a picture of that yesterday, like you're doing it, and that's what everybody needs to be doing. But we're seeing fires, like hundreds of fires, right? In food plant production facilities. We're seeing livestock and animals being slaughtered by the millions, if not hundreds of millions. I have no idea what the numbers are.
Yeah, there's quote unquote avian bird flu or something like that, and
right.
Chickens and other birds are being put to death. Yeah, food processing plants all over the place. Yeah,
they're just blowing up. They're just blowing up. So, right. So we're seeing the food supply is under attack, and so when that plays out, I don't know. I would assume probably this winter, but I have no idea. But it's already playing out, obviously, in price increases that we're seeing. But that's again, it's just a symptom of the greater picture that we talked about at the beginning, which is the whole system's going to zero. Any aspect, in my opinion, any aspect of the system that is against God and against the natural order, right? It is going to zero. So that artificial food production system where that's going away, right? And all of the levels of sort of government and bureaucracy and shipping and weird production methods and GMOs and all that stuff, that's going away. And so if you rely on that, that's not going to be fun. So yeah, I mean, again, just to drive home that point, right? I would be doing kind of what you're doing if I was in the States, right? I'd be out rural. I'd be building community and networking, building community and growing food. And that's what I'd be doing. Yeah.
We're my garden, which, it's a very nice garden, and I had some help with it and all that stuff. But once it's built, I have 9 raised beds. Once it's built, I mean, the work and maintenance is very limited. There's not a whole lot of work and maintenance in it. And I'm much better this year about succession planting, meaning one thing is finished. For example, peas. Peas are a cold weather crop, and so they don't last too long in the North Carolina heat. So those went out, peppers went in, and so so I've harvested cabbage, made sauerkraut. We are freezing our greens, freezing peas, and I'm working on a plan to modify the bed so that I'm able to grow year round. And I was able to grow a couple things that lasted through the winter here. So yeah, I feel pretty good about my food situation, but yeah, if you're not sort of actively preparing for higher food prices, much higher food prices, lack of availability. I mean, there's food plant after food plant, like you mentioned, that are catching on fire. I don't think we're hearing about I don't watch the news, but I don't think we're hearing about the avian bird flu and quote unquote. And all the millions of birds that are being put to death. I mean, this is food that's not going to be available in the coming weeks, months, and years. And so, I was even talking to my neighbor who I get my eggs from, and she was like, I can't even get the fertilized eggs to hatch chicks now. That's even becoming a challenge because of the quote unquote avian bird flu. And so it's this attack or it's coming on all fronts. It's everywhere from the processors to the farms to even to the homesteaders. There's the attack going on. And so, luckily I was able to set up my garden. I'm sure my next step is to get chickens and then to get solar, because you need food, water, and energy. And so if I can get solar, I'll have food, water, and energy, and protection, which I have as well. So
yeah, and it it's like the other thing too, right? For people who are dealing with winter, lots of people dealt with that, right? For the history of humanity prior to supply chains, right?
yeah.
And so get back into the canning and the jarring and have fun with it, right? Like grab your family, grab your kids, learn how to can, learn how to jar, learn how to do all that stuff, which I have none of those skills, of course. But have fun with it, right? And just and enjoy this new opportunity to be a little bit more in control of your own life. How cool is that? The supply chain is going away. The beast, the monster, that evil freaking thing that sucks your life force and keeps you on the hamster wheel is going away. Awesome, right? So you can get back to a little bit of self-responsibility and self-sufficiency. How fun is that? What a more enjoyable life it is to be like canning fruits and vegetables and sauces and whatever with your family versus waking up at 5 a.m. to be out of the house by 7, to be at work by 8, to slave away in front of a computer till 6 and go home and collapse. So that's pretty cool. And let's see, you mentioned there was a couple of other things I wanted to touch on that are escaping me. Let's see, the food supply. Oh, right. Yeah. So you mentioned, you mentioned your neighbor, right, with the chickens. And it's like, that's another perfect example. Cut out the middleman. Like, why? And of course, I'm not asking you or your neighbor, but I'm just using this as an example. Why is a chicken, an egg producer getting fertilized eggs from somewhere else, like from a company, right? So that's the stuff that's going away, right? That middleman stuff. So if you want to produce chickens, have like they can fuck and make babies. It's amazing how that works. And you can cut out the middleman, right? And so that's sort of like what they've done in the US and these kinds of places. They've regulated everything to the point where there almost has to be middlemen in everything. There has to be there's so many levels of bureaucracy and checks and balances and companies. So I would say another big piece too is like start ignoring that stuff, for real. Like start finding the power that you have in you as a human being to stand up for what's right on earth, sort of under God's blessing, right? And say, no, this is how I'm going to live. And it doesn't matter like what fake ass ordinance, you guys have tried to create. I'm literally going to ignore you. So, yeah.
Yeah. So a couple things. Number one, I think you're exactly right with the attitude and mindset that you need to have. Like, yes, this is an opportunity for a new life, and have fun with it. The life of, and we're seeing this now, like the life of, getting up early so that you can commute to a job that you hate, so that you can, not raise your kids and send them off to daycare and all that stuff like that. That's one choice, but I think a better choice would be to downsize your living expenses and try to live a more natural, self-reliant, independent life. And so with your family and growing food together and canning things together and all that stuff. I remember, like when everything shut down, we would take the kids to I don't know, like a carnival or something like that. And it was always just really stressful. And, getting the kids in the car and taking them there and getting them out and, and they're fighting and they're crying. And it's just a freaking nightmare to take young children any place. And then, you're spending money and they don't enjoy it. And it's just, it's just a frustrating waste of time, energy, and money. And then you come home and you're like, oh, why did we do that? And then when everything closed down, it was like, life got so much less stressful and for me more fun, because we were just hanging out and we were having a good time together, and we weren't worried about going to this thing or that thing, or oh, we gotta go, and so it simplified things and made things a lot more fun. I think we grew closer as a family, and I think we've had a lot of fun during this time, and we haven't really changed how we operate since everything went back up. And this summer, we have plans on learning how to can and learning how to preserve food. We already started freezing some of the stuff, but now that the summer is here, we can, we're making sauerkraut. We're gonna store that. We're gonna do a lot of pickling. We're gonna do, just a lot of food preparation and preservation, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And the kids are going to learn a great skill for them, and yeah, we're going to have a great time. And then the other thing is, you mentioned sort of ignoring the stupid laws. Like, for example, I was talking to my neighbors as well. You can slaughter and process like 20,000 chickens a year, but you can't kill one cow. You can't process one cow on your land. And again, that is an arbitrary rule that's set up so that you're forced into the meat processors. And one of the big things now, we've heard stories about jackbooted thugs, police, coming and laying down the law or whatever, and enforcing the will of the government or the central banks or whatever. I think the opposite is going to happen, where there's not going to be enough law enforcement to stop, to control what's happening. The food riots and the crime waves that are going to start happening. Because people are already stealing gas. People are going to start stealing food if they aren't already, and it's just going to be a more dangerous, crime-filled time in history. And so they're not going to have the ability to stop you from, doing things that they shouldn't be stopping you from doing anyways, like processing a cow on your land or things like that. And so I think the opposite is going to be true, where there's not going to be enough law enforcement. You're going to call them, and there's going to be a break-in at your house. You're going to call them and they're going to come in an hour, at which point, it's already too late. I think the average response time in Detroit is like 58 minutes. And it's like, at that point, they've already done what they're going to do, and they've left. And at that point, they're just filing paperwork, and nobody thinks that anything's going to happen. So that's going to be the problem, rather than the heavy-handed, militarized police force and the rest of it. It's not going to be that. It's going to be the exact opposite.
Yeah, and there'll be different realities in different places, and people will experience different things. I'm sure the jackboot thugs will be alive and well in large cities and places that are in the worst shape, because they'll be experiencing the results of exactly what you're talking about, right? There will be those crime waves in response to shortages and scarcity of all kinds of things. But yeah, I would just say, create. Just stay in that space of creation. Stay in that space of creation, and the connected to that word, right, is creativity. Creativity, very connected. And when you're creating, and you're creating from heart space, you're creating from sort of a divine space, there isn't much that sort of energy field can do to you, right? That angry, like, stop what you're doing and we're gonna, that's not, because there's so much creativity there. It's like the guy shows up, you smile at him, shake his hand, feed him a sandwich, and send him on his way. Like, and then the other thing I want to just point out too is that like you don't want to be stuck in any sort of fear-based paradigm at all, right? So if you're worried about the jackboot thugs like Asher's talking about, which I spent years in that sort of paradigm, right? If you're worried about the jackboot thug, think about this too. They can't have a policeman or a military guy or a whatever at every person's house in the entire country, right? Like that's not feasible. So all they can do is like try to scare you on the TV. And if things get too weird in some place, send people in there for like a few days or something, right? To try and there's nothing at the end of the day that they can do. If you look at humanity over time, over history, that it's just about what people are willing to accept. At the end of the day, these are people that have to enforce stuff. And whatever people are willing to accept and whatever capacity they have, they're going to enforce some amount of that stuff. But that's what it comes down to. So stand in that, right? Stand in that sovereignty, but don't worry about it. You don't have to fight with them about it. You just have to stay in that place of creation, of just creating the new, ignoring that stuff. Let it play out. Like let it do its thing in the places it needs to do its thing in. One thing I wanted to go back to for 1 second was, we were talking about the shortages and sort of some of the results of what that's going to look like. And just understand, right, out of the old beast system collapsing, they would like to shuffle us right into this new beast system that they're creating, which is a much more technological, much more artificial system where, much more about the actual physical capturing of the human soul, like with technology and this sort of thing. And so part of that process, right, is that as things get really scarce and your life gets more and more difficult from that standpoint, well, what comes behind that, which we've talked about, of course, many times, is the government assistance, right? What comes behind that is, oh, shoot, you don't have enough food. Don't worry, here's your, what was that?
Here's your central bank. Here's your universal basic income in the form of a central bank digital currency that you can buy your genetically modified food from the government store. So yeah, that's your alternative. So
exactly. And
be ready to say, you know what? No, thanks. I don't need that.
Right. And that'll be harder, right? If you're dependent on it. So if you're not doing the things that we're talking about, if you're living in a big city and you're dependent on all the systems, like that's tough. That's a tough spot to be in. What are those? There's that movie. I don't know if it was a book first or not, but that movie Soylent Green. And then they show a piece of this in Cloud Atlas too, which is a wonderful movie. I encourage everybody to watch. But in Cloud Atlas, where they're feeding basically processed people back to synthetic people who are sort of the slave class, right? So you get into that world, right? That they would like to create for us. And so yeah, we have to stay very human. And in this time like that, those words carry weight right now, right? Given what we know is going on with various medical experiments that people have subjected themselves to, and some of the interesting findings that they're finding in those people and potentially even people connected to them and so on and so forth. So I would say very human, very much in our heart, very much in creation. And we are way more powerful than them, like way, way, way more powerful than them, because they're capped. They are coming from a scarcity, fear-based paradigm that has a cap to how its level of power. Activated humans living in creation, creating, and so on and so forth. You okay, buddy? That's a much more powerful dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have a choice between a human future and existence and a machine where we're literally a cog in that system. And so choose wisely. But you have to put yourself in a position where you do have a choice, where you can say no to their offers, and it's going to be an offer. It's not something that you'll need to take. It's just an offer that if you've positioned yourself accordingly, then you won't have to take that offer. And it's the same thing with everything else. People who saw the writing on the wall and knew what was coming, didn't have to take the offer of the injection. And people who position themselves well and have their food supply, water supply, energy supply outside of the system, they will be able to say no to those offers. And that's really the key. And so, it's localizing your supply chains, most importantly with food, and also building the community. And that's been the message from the beginning. And here we are, couldn't be a more, the message is even more applicable right now.
Yep. Yeah, man. I mean, it's also like, it's also find your tribe time for real, right? So get very, it's a time for real authenticity. We've been under a spell, we've been under a spell for our whole lives, for everybody, right? And it's the spell of the TV, it's the spell of the school, it's the spell of just sort of the powers that be, the culture, the media. Certainly I was under that spell, and I'm still freeing myself, right? And I think that's part of what this process is. It's sort of freeing our minds, freeing our consciousness, doing the shadow work, like looking at yourself, doing all of that stuff, so you're not trapped by mental programs and just sort of darkness that you've taken on for various things. And then if you can, kind of get on that path and be in the process of being more authentic all the time, then you start to tap into your capacities, which are amazing as a human, right? And then I think also the authenticity attracts to you the people who you're kind of put here to do shit with, on earth. And so, and that's really fun, right? And it's, when we partly, I think when we're talking about community, at least for me, it's like, that's partly what I'm referring to, those people who actually have your back, right? For real, because the connection you have is so authentic on that level because of your authenticity and sort of the shared goals or the shared, whatever the connection, right? To have a community of those people, that's unpenetrable, so to speak. As Azure used to refer to the unpenetrated, still on Earth, the few unpenetrated souls, but yeah.
No, it's true. Darren says, good morning. Hey, Darren, how's it going? Ruth says, good day, gentlemen. Long time. We have the same issues here in South Africa, but we are basically ungovernable and pretty expert at ignoring government. Bunch of crooks. Yep. Most are poor and independent. So yeah, empowered poverty. So you don't need a lot of stuff. I think that's one of the things that we've been sort of tricked into thinking. And it's this social media culture and everything like that. Like when you're scrolling through social media and you see your friends, or whatever, living their best life or whatever, like you are seeing the 0.1% of their life when they're at their best. And it's such an illusion that people are living these like incredible lives that they portray on social media. Like that is not what their life is like. Their life is not like this one snapshot of everyone having a good time and the best of the best. That's what you're seeing on social media. You're seeing the best, the 0.1% where it's the best of the best. Most people are not, like, and it just tricks everyone into thinking like, oh man, like, my life isn't like that. Why can't I have those things or be that type of person or whatever? And it's just a trick, and people falling for it. And we need to, I don't know, get away from that, whatever you want to call it. It's not real. It's just an illusion that everyone's living these like wonderful lives that are, that you aspire to. It's not true. It's not true. Most people, So I saw a statistic. Like 2/3 of millennials who are making more than six figures are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
Like they're up to their eyeballs in debt. They're trying to live well beyond their means, and it's an illusion. What their lives are an illusion, and it's going to come crashing down if they're not ready for it. And so, to try to keep up with the Joneses or whatever, that's going to be like spinning your wheels on, like a hamster spinning on its wheel. It's not going to be a fruitful, fun, inspired existence. Empowered poverty. That's how to do it.
Oh, that's right. I mean, it everything has to go back to God, right? So the world of the matrix, the world of the artificial, the world of who's got the nicest Lamborghini. Nothing wrong with nice Lamborghinis at all. Not at all. If you can afford one and you enjoy driving one, go enjoy driving one. Absolutely. But it goes back to sort of what are your goals, right? And you've talked about this many times, is like defining success. So is success being the coolest TikToker, right? Being like, having the best Facebook profile or whatever, Instagram something, and getting all the hottest chicks if you're a dude, or getting the richest guy if you're a girl, or whatever, right? Best looking richest guy if you're a girl, whatever. And having the nice house, nice cars. And I like all of that stuff. I'm married, not that other stuff, the female stuff, but having nice things and living a good life, like I'm totally in favor of that. That being said, defining what success is and what's important and what matters, and it matters right now. Because if you're living in a $5 trillion mansion in Beverly Hills, but you have zero skills, zero real friends, zero, so you rely on the police for your security, you're cut off from your supply, your supply of everything, right? It's all a multi-layered supply chain your whole life. But you've got really nice, $2,000 t-shirts. We're headed to a time where that stuff will no longer matter at all. Yeah. And so it's like the asshole in the asshole in Tennessee who you made fun of, right? Who has chickens running around and so on, so like he's going to be in much, much better shape. And so it's sort of, it is a day of reckoning, like it totally is. And so we're at this time where it flips, and I think that's true on a nation scale as well, right? So places potentially like Africa, like South America, Central America, like other places like that, maybe some places in Asia, and I don't even know where, but that have sort of been thought of as lesser than for all of this time, and sort of in the matrix world are kind of lesser than. Those places are going to be in a lot better shape than sort of the Babylonian, the full Babylon societies and countries where things have gotten so far out of hand, so far away from God that nobody's producing anything. People don't even care about their family. I mean, the culture that I live in Ecuador, family means something, like for real. Like nothing here comes before family. Nothing. Like if there's a family issue, the whole family is going to drop everything and deal with it. Period. The kids live at home until they're married. There's 3-4 generations often in one house. There's no such thing as retirement homes. Because they take care of their family, the elders. There's no such thing as homelessness, because if someone is down on their luck, the family's got them. They don't live spread out. They spend, at the very minimum, they spend Sunday together. Everybody, like 3-4 generations, will be all together on Sunday, often the whole weekend. And that may be in addition to living together, right? But they're going to actually spend that day together, period, end of story. Like you can't ask an Ecuadorian to do something on a Sunday. He's with his family, basically, so on and so forth, right? And everybody produces food. There is no supply chain, so on and so forth. So it's just an example, but that flip is happening. So whether it's personal life flip of, hey, I lived a righteous life, I'm clean with God and with myself and with my family, those people are going to be in good shape, are in good shape. And if we're talking larger scale, like nations, yeah, places like the US and Western Europe, and their day of reckoning is coming. And you're seeing that, right? This is the most advanced aspects of the beast system that's collapsing. So, I think that flip is happening as well.
Yeah, right. You have in the wealthy, more prosperous nations that have the most sophisticated and complicated supply chains, those are the ones that have the farthest to fall. And places where people live on the land and all that stuff, like where are they going to fall? I mean, they might for the cities and the poor countries, that they'll probably have a hard time because especially if you're a food importer, that's going to be tough for the poor countries that are importing food or are reliant on outside supply chains or have debt denominated in US dollars. Excuse me, because the US dollar is gaining in strength relative to other currencies, not relative to things that we buy, but relative to other currencies. And so, so that's a problem. And so, yeah, I mean, the message is, as it always has been, to become more self-reliant, independent, less reliant on the system. And it's more fun. I mean, it really is a lot more fun to, spend that weekend with your family and grow food together and preserve it and all that stuff. It really gets to be a lot of fun. I mean, I enjoy it because that's what I like. But I think for people who are new to that, I think you'll be surprised at how much fun it is.
I mean, it's authentic, right? Like I used to, my life used to be, and I think this is true for a lot of people, and maybe you can switch out the activities that people enjoy because different people enjoy different things. But, my life used to be wake up in the morning, stress, right? Go hard all day. And then the things that would bring me a little peace, like a little was like, I'd carve out Sunday to sit there and drink beer and watch football, right? Or I'd maybe on Saturday once in a while, I'd get to go play golf or go fishing or something, or, do some sort of activity that I enjoyed. But none of that, and there was some human connection in some of that, right? But none of that was really healthy for me. Like none of that was me being in this awesome, authentic, creative space, creating my life the way I want it. It was just slaving away in the matrix. And then having some things that helped me reset a little bit, right? And just made me sort of forget about how difficult everything was and how much stress I have in my life and all that kind of stuff. So if you compare that sort of mindset and lifestyle of like, I have to go really hard because blah, 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 and I still go really hard, but that's because I'm creating big things that I enjoy creating, right? So it's a different kind of go really hard. But it's like I have to go really hard. And then find some release valve, right? Type of thing, versus I'm in this creative space with the people I love around me, right? Who I like cherish and who I'm raising in many cases, and so on and so forth. And we're doing stuff together that's actually human and fun, because it's also about that, right? It's about that human interaction, that human connection. If then if you can take that to the next level, right, and have friends and neighbors and stuff like that you're doing that stuff with also, life gets pretty good, right? Life gets pretty fun. I want to jump back for 1 second, and I got to actually run out of here, but I want to jump back for 1 second. You were talking earlier about, currency and sort of how it's used to control assets. And, it really is in many ways the linchpin or a linchpin of the beast system is currency and how it's created and used and put out into the quote unquote economy and all that stuff. And I just want to drive home a couple of points there. So the way the tax system is globally is that you can basically do what you want and have pretty low taxes in most of the world. as long as you don't accumulate too much wealth. So for example, I was having a meeting yesterday with my accountant and an investor, right? And we're going over some things and talking about Ecuadorian tax law versus US tax law and how it works and repatriating assets and all this kind of stuff. And it just drove home this point, which has been driven home for me many times, where, as long as you stay under a certain level of sort of control of assets, you're not bothered very much. But as soon as you sort of get over a certain level, they want to know everything and they have it all tracked. So for example, in Ecuador, every year you have to declare your total wealth if it's over a certain amount. Not a lot, like $1 million or $2 million. You have to declare that to the government every year and say, here's how much stuff I have. Right. And then if the way that the tax authorities, for example, in the US treat, so for example, if I'm in the US and I send money to Ecuador for whatever, but for an investment, and then if that same amount of money comes back into the US, I'm fine, no problem. But if larger amounts come back into the US, right, then there's issues. Then they want to know, right? And they want to know, right? The US government wants you to file every year telling them, this is how much money I have in a foreign bank account. This is how much assets I own, like real estate or otherwise, internationally. If you don't do that, you're in violation of the quote unquote law, and that you could literally go to jail, right? So they have this cap essentially on, and so if you're the wrong person, right? If you're the wrong person and you rise above a certain level, they'll just use that system to take you out, right? And so that's another interesting sort of piece on that whole thing, because yeah, that's enough.
Yeah, and I forgot what I was going to say, but maybe that's a good place to call it a day. Let's see. Ruth says South Africans have little truck for Gates. I'm guessing she means trust for Gates. We have long memories of what he has done in Africa. Jesse is right about us here. We have different values. For example, less than 15% officially took shots. That's good. But consumerism has had a devastating effects on families. Our president allegedly had U.S. money stolen out of the furniture in his farmhouse. So he might have skipped declaring and saved on banking fees. He didn't call the cops either. So interesting. I don't know much about that one, but yeah, Africa, they have a lot of resources, a lot of, good quality land. I think it's been sort of exploited, to say the least, over the years. And I think the Chinese are coming in and buying up a lot of Africa. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there in the next few decades. Anyways, any last words?
No, that's it. Yeah, enjoyed it. Good chatting with you, Asher, as always.
Yeah, it was fun. All right. Hopefully we'll do this again next week, and we'll talk to you later.